Rahul Gandhi, who had been making speeches, viewers, who had been making speeches. We'll come back to the Gyanvapi story in just a few moments. But Rahul Gandhi, who has been making speeches at Cambridge over the last day or so, where he talked about the Indian Constitution and the fact that India, according to him, is only a union of states and is not a nation, as stated by the Constitution, was confronted at Cambridge. He was confronted at Cambridge and asked a few questions. The interaction itself has gone viral on Twitter. We are going to show you the visuals of that interaction. And I'm going to be joined by the redoubtable Indian who actually fact-checked Rahul Gandhi and basically exposed him. Let me go across to the gentleman, but let me first tell you what Rahul Gandhi said. Siddharth Verma is with us, but let me first tell you what Rahul Gandhi said. Rahul Gandhi said that that as far as he's concerned, India is a union of states. Let's first listen to the conversation, and then we will go to Mr. Verma. Mr. Verma challenges him on screen. You can see those pictures. Let's listen to the interaction.
You quoted Article 1 of the Constitution saying India, that is Bharat, is a union of states, as per the Constitution. But if you turn a page back, look at the preamble, it does mention that India is a nation. Bharat itself is one of the oldest surviving civilizations of the world. And the term finds its origin in the Vedas. So we have a really old civilization. So Chanakya, even Chanakya, when he interacted with students in Takshashila, he made it clear to them that they might belong to different Mahajanpads, but ultimately they belong to a nation that is Bharat. Adi Shankaracharya, he said, 10 seconds.
1 second. Did he use the word nation?
He said, you belong to a Rashtra. Rashtra is, the Sanskrit.
Rashtra is kingdom.
Rashtra, no, it's a Sanskrit name for a nation. So
nation is the word nation, right, is a Western concept.
So when I talk about nation, I don't just talk about a political entity, because we've had these experiments across the world. You had USSR, you had Yugoslavia, you had the experimentation with the United Arab Republic. So unless nations have a strong socio-cultural and emotional bonding and a composite culture, a constitution cannot make a nation. Nations make constitutions. My question is, don't you think as a political leader, your idea of India is not only flawed and incorrect, but also destructive because it attempts to whitewash a history of thousands of years?
No, actually, I don't think so.
Well, that was Siddharth Verma confronting Rahul Gandhi. He joins us now. Siddharth Verma, obviously there were a large number of Rahul Gandhi supporters there in the crowd, and they were jeering you, mocking you, trying to cut you off, trying to intimidate you perhaps. But first of all, what is so wrong about what Rahul Gandhi has said, according to you? You have been citing the preamble. Can you explain what you were trying to tell Rahul Gandhi, which he was finding difficult to accept?
So there are two things in this. What Rahul Gandhi said was that India is a union of states, and we have our country because in 1947, we had a negotiation between states. So India is a result of a negotiation between states. The reason why I disagreed with him was not only is it legally and constitutionally wrong, it's also historically wrong. Because we have grown up, in this country, believing and knowing that India is an ancient civilization. Bharat itself is a term which is thousands of years old. You find its mention in the Vedas, in Mahabharata, in Vishnu Puran, and there is something more that binds the country together. And we might have had different kingdoms, but we have had, common cultural ethos, values, and a civilizational history that brings us together. To say that India is merely an artificial political entity which came into being just 75 years ago is whitewashing our, rich cultural heritage and our cultural values. I told him that, there have been experiments with making artificial nations through constitutions and through mandates, which happened after the First World War and after the Second World War. Nothing succeeded because the people never felt close to each other. And India is not a negotiation between states. You can make or break states. The union government, the parliament has made new states, so I just think it's not only factually incorrect, it's morally incorrect, it's destructive, because it takes us away from something that we have cherished all our lives and something that will take us forward through the future.
The basic contention by Rahul Gandhi is that India is a union of states. He points that out, that particular line in the Constitution, claiming that here today we have fissiparous tendencies that have been unleashed by a government. What was the response to your interjection? And you asked a question right after. What did he say?
So he disagreed with me, obviously, and he kind of reiterated what he was saying earlier. I did get an opportunity to speak to him again just afterwards. I got the mic again to just put in 2 sentences, and I told him that the negotiations which happened in 1947 were not like the negotiation between different states which happened in the United States. But he disagreed with me, and he said that his grandfather was a part of those negotiations, so he knows more about it. So that was the end of the conversation. And I was quite surprised that, there were a lot of people around me who seemed to kind of agree with that narrative, and which is why it was quite disturbing.
Okay, let's first play out what Rahul had said earlier, viewers, in the Congress Chintan Shivar that really sparked off this debate. Listen in.
Some days back in Parliament, I made a speech where I said, India, Bharat, is a union of states. That is the line that is written in our constitution. India is not described as a nation. It is described as a union of states. Meaning, the states of India, the people of India, have come together to form the union. They have come together to form the union.
Okay, so your basic objection is that this is dangerous and it undermines India's territorial integrity.
Yes, absolutely, because it gives states a kind of a larger than nation status, which they are not. The states have been components of constituents of this nation, not just after 1947, but even before that. And the reason why the negotiations during 1947 were successful, the reason why the Iron Man of India, Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel, was successful, because the people of those states wanted to stay with India. And that's the main issue. We do share something. We have a composite culture. We may have a lot of diversity. We have different languages. We have different festivals, but doesn't mean that we belong to like different kingdoms,
And you said he invoked his grandfather. What exactly did he say?
So he said that my grandfather was a part of the negotiations that happened during 1947.
His great-grandfather. I mean, Nehru. I presume he's talking about Nehru. So his great-grandfather is a part of the negotiations, so he should know.
So he knows that those negotiations were kind of a negotiated peace between states at that point. So it was quite unfortunate because, Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel's journey to build the modern India and to integrate princely states was more about the egos of the dynasties that were there and their own personal agendas. History tells us that it was never a problem of integrating the people. It was more of a political negotiation. And the reason why it was successful was because these dynasties could never, rule over their people. And to say that, all those people negotiated some kind of, a peace, or there was some samjhauta which happened in 1947, it's not only historically inaccurate, but, it's extremely unfortunate. And I hope that most Indians don't subscribe to such sort of a narrative.
Well, viewers, let me point out the distinction here. The distinction is that Rahul Gandhi, of course, says that India is a union of states, but what he forgets is that it's not a federation of states. I think he's confusing two issues here. America is a federation of states formed after civil war was waged across the length and breadth. There was actual incursions, etc. Here, viewers, it wasn't quite the case, as Siddharth Verma very rightly points out. Now, Siddharth Verma, you talked about a civilizational continuity that defines Bharat as such. And you were trying to explain to him that Bharat, the word, has been used in the preamble. Could you explain?
Yes. So, the Indian Constitution uses the term Bharat, as one of there's two names of India, India and Bharat. And what I was trying to explain it to him, that even in the Constitution, in the preamble, you do find the term nation. So even when he talks about the Constitution, if you go purely by the Constitution, there's a kind of cherry picking which is done to peddle a narrative. You don't read the first page of the Constitution, which says that India is a nation, and you move to Article 1, which just enlists the territories of India, which is why it uses the term Union of States. B.R. Ambedkar made it clear in his speeches in the Constituent Assembly that India is an indestructible union of destructible states. So we have states which are administrative units, of course, but India is an indestructible union of destructible states. And talking about Bharat, the term itself, because it has a large history. Even Adi Shankar, when he established 4 mutts from Odisha to Uttarakhand to Gujarat and Karnataka, did he not have the conception of a nation in mind, or was he just going, had an imaginary view of it? So it's incredibly unfortunate that these historical facts are being ignored.
Let's just listen in to that interaction between you and Rahul Gandhi, and I have a subsequent question to ask of you. Let's first listen into that interaction. This is Mr. Verma standing up there. He's a student, I believe, in Cambridge. And he takes on Rahul Gandhi on his original premise. Listen in.
You quoted Article 1 of the Constitution saying India, that is Bharat, is a union of states, as per the Constitution. But if you turn a page back and look at the preamble, it does mention that India is a nation. Bharat itself is one of the oldest surviving civilizations of the world. And the term finds its origin in the Vedas. So we have a really old civilization. So Chanakya, even Chanakya, when he interacted with the students in Takshashila, he made it clear to them that they might belong to different Mahajanpads, but ultimately they belong to a nation that is Bharat. Adi Shankaracharya, he said, 10 seconds.
One second. Did he use the word nation?
He said, you belong to a Rashtra. Rashtra is, the Sanskrit.
Rashtra is kingdom.
Rashtra, no, it's a Sanskrit name for a nation. So
Nation, nation is the word nation, right, is a Western concept.
So when I talk about nation, I don't just talk about a political entity, because we've had these experiments across the world. You had USSR, you had Yugoslavia, you had the experimentation with the United Arab Republic. So unless nations have a strong socio-cultural and emotional bonding and a composite culture, a constitution cannot make a nation. Nations make constitutions. My question is, don't you think as a political leader, your idea of India is not only flawed and incorrect, but also destructive because it attempts to whitewash a history of thousands of years?
No, actually, I don't think so.
Mr. Verma, very quickly coming back to you, we heard after you finished your question a large number of people sort of being a little boorish and laughing you off. Did they speak to you after? Did Rahul Gandhi come up to you after? Or what was the general environment?
Well, I did not speak to him afterwards. I did have an exchange within the parameters of the program, just a bit more elaboration from his side and my side as well. But the people all around me were kind of, I could hear, because I was concentrated on making my comments, but I could hear, them believe a bit irritated, a bit agitated about it. And I did not have a lot of discussions afterwards, but I've been having discussions with people in Cambridge for a long time. And I do feel that, unfortunately, my point of view is a bit in minority, especially in that kind of environment. And I wonder why, because especially in Cambridge, I would expect people to be more knowledgeable about India's history, more knowledgeable about what the constitution was and how the circumstances were at that point. So it's a bit surprising to me that that's the kind of narrative which a lot of people here believe in.
Did you get a sense that you were being basically pushed into not asking questions, not sparking a debate? Did you get that feeling? Because Cambridge is a world-renowned university. It takes a lot of effort, and I'm sure you put in so much to get in there. Are you disappointed that it's not engendering and fostering debate?
I mean, yes, the interviewer, for instance, absolutely cut me off at some point and, just asked me to finish, which is why I had to, stop midway and kind of ask the question. But if you're asking a question, you have to, put in the background to make that question relevant. And I had a few points which I could not speak. So there was, they say that there was paucity of time, but, I think in such an environment, of course, you need more discussion. If someone's making a point, you let them make. I would have taken, I was just asking for 10 more seconds, but I didn't get it. And even when I had the time, I could hear voices all around me, which was quite distracting and disturbing. But I'm, happy that I could make some points, and I hope that people who listen to it, understand what's going on and they make their own choices. And I'm, really sure that most of the Indians, they do not believe in the narrative which is being peddled that India is 75 years old.
Last question to you, Mr. Verma. Do you believe that this was an orchestrated gathering of Congress supporters, Rahul Gandhi supporters? Most people there were perhaps bussed in, brought in, etc., to try and, create some sort of an, how should one say it, narrative?
Gatherings are usually, such gatherings do have an aspect. They did have an open invitation for people, which is why I was able to get in. But of course, they had a lot of reserved seats in which, you had people belonging to certain political ideologies, and they kind of occupied the front seats, and they were kind of running the show. So, it did have a part, that sort of angle to it as well.
Well, thanks indeed, Siddharth Verma, for speaking to us. What an interesting interaction. Siddharth Verma standing up for what he believes is the truth, contending with Rahul Gandhi, and trying desperately to drill some perspectives to correct perhaps what he believes